Hello, we're back. I'm gonna finish my setup, which will take me maybe like a minute. Well, less than that probably. We'll wait for another minute or two in case anyone swings by, and then we'll get started. All right, everything should be set up and ready to go. Oh, a little interference here. Hang on. Let me get this sorted. Okay, I think that's a bit better. All right, it's been a minute. I've been pretty sick, but I'm mostly better. So fingers crossed that, I don't know, my health doesn't give out again. We're back with Deathworld, and I plan to get back to Weird Tales as well. There's one specifically I want to read. It's a short story written by Ray Bradbury that I only know about because I watched a short film it got turned into recently called Quest. Pretty funky, so I'm looking forward to that. And I'm enjoying Deathworld. I peeked ahead a bit. There's some fun stuff coming up. So yeah, let's get back to it. Might be a little rusty because it has been a minute, so bear with me. And I know this is like really a long lead-in. So apologies. Hang on, I just managed to close the tab to Project Gutenberg. Super cool. All right, we stopped at chapter 13 last time, and we left off with Jason dinAlt being punished for getting Kirk's son killed during an attack of wildlife, and he's been punished with being stuck inside. He's not allowed to go anywhere else until the next trip home, or rather the next trip out of Pyrrus arrives. All right, back to it. Chapter 14. Jason spent one depressed day lying on his bunk, counting rivets, forcing himself to accept defeat. Kirk's order that he was not to leave the sealed building tied his hands completely. He felt himself close to the answer, but he was never going to get it. One day of defeat was all he could take. Kirk's attitude was completely emotional, untempered by the slightest touch of logic. This fact kept driving home until Jason could no longer ignore it. Emotional reasoning was something he had learned to mistrust early in life. He couldn't agree with Kirk in the slightest, which meant he had to utilize the 10 remaining days to solve the problem. If it meant disobeying Kirk, it would still have to be done. He grabbed up his note plate with a new enthusiasm. His first sources of information had been used up, but there must be others. Chewing the scriber and needling his brain, he slowly built up a list of other possibilities. Any idea, no matter how wild, was put down. When the plate was filled, he wiped the long shots and the impossibles, such as consulting off-world historical records. This was a Pyrrhon problem, and had to be settled on this planet, or not at all. The list worked down to 2 probables. Either old records, notebooks, or diaries that individual Pyrrans might have in their possession, or verbal histories that had been passed down the generations by word of mouth. The first choice seemed to be the most probable, and he acted on it at once. After a careful check of his medkit and gun, he went to see Bruco. "What's new and deadly in the world since I left?" he asked. Bruco glared at him. "You can't get out. Kirk has forbidden it." "Did he put you in charge of guarding me to see if I obeyed?" Jason's voice was quiet and cold. Bruco rubbed his jaw and frowned in thought. Finally, he just shrugged. "No, I'm not guarding you, nor do I want the job. As far as I know, this is between you and Kirk, and it can stay that way. Leave whenever you want, and get yourself killed quietly someplace so there will be an end to the trouble you cause, once and for all." "I love you too," Jason said. "Now, brief me on the wildlife." The only new mutation that routine precautions wouldn't take care of was a slate-colored lizard that spit a fast nerve poison with deadly accuracy. Death took place in seconds if the saliva touched any bare skin. The lizards had to be looked out for and shot before they came within range. An hour of lizard blasting in a training chamber made him proficient in the exact procedure. Jason left the sealed buildings quietly, and no one saw him go. He followed the map to the nearest barracks, shuffling tiredly through the dusty streets. It was a hot, quiet afternoon, broken only by rumblings from the distance and the occasional crack of his gun. It was cool inside the thick-walled barracks buildings, and he collapsed onto a bench until the sweat dried and his heart stopped pounding. Then he went to the nearest recreation room to start his search. Before it began, it was finished. None of the Pyrrans kept old artifacts of any kind, and thought the whole idea was very funny. After the 20th negative answer, Jason was ready to admit defeat in this line of investigation. There was as much chance of meeting a Pyrran with old documents as finding a bundle of grandfather's letters in a soldier's kit bag. This left a single possibility: verbal histories. Again, Jason questioned, with the same lack of results. The fun had worn off the game for the Pyrrans, and they were beginning to growl. Jason stopped while he was still in one piece. The commissary served him a meal that tasted like plastic paste and wood pulp. He ate it quickly, then sat brooding over the empty tray, hating to admit to another dead end. Who could supply him with answers? All the people he had talked to were so young. They had no interest or patience for storytelling. That was an old folks' hobby. And there were no oldsters on Pyrrus. With one exception that he knew of, the librarian, Polly. It was a possibility. A man who worked with records and books might have an interest in some of the older ones. He might even remember reading volumes now destroyed. A very slim lead, indeed, but one that had to be pursued. Walking to the library almost killed Jason. The torrential rains made the footing bad, and in the dim light it was hard to see what was coming. A snapper came in close enough to take a chunk out of his flesh before he could blast it. The antitoxin made him dizzy, and he lost some blood before he could get the wound dressed. He reached the library, exhausted and angry. Paulie was working on the guts of one of the catalog machines. He didn't stop until Jason had tapped him on the shoulder. Switching on his hearing aid, the Pyrran stood quietly, crippled and bent, waiting for Jason to talk. "Have you any old papers or letters that you have kept for your personal use?" A shake of the head, no. "What about stories? You know, about great things that have happened in the past that someone might have told you when you were very young?" Negative. Results negative. Every question was answered by a shake of Paulie's head. And very soon the old man grew irritated and pointed to the work he hadn't yet finished. "Yes, I know you have work to do," Jason said, "but this is important." Paulie shook his head an angry no and reached to turn off his hearing aid. Jason groped for a question that might get a more positive answer. There was something tugging at his mind, a word he had heard and made a note of, to be investigated later, something that Kirk had said. That's it! It was right there on the tip of his tongue. "Just a second, Paulie. Just one more question. What is a grubber? Have you ever seen one? Know what they do or where they can be found?" The words were cut off as Polly whirled and lashed the back of his good arm into Jason's face. Though the man was aged and crippled, the blow almost fractured Jason's jaw, sending him sliding across the floor. Through a daze, he saw Polly hobbling towards him, making thick bubbling noises in his ruined throat. What remained of his face was twisted and working with anger. There was no time for diplomacy. Moving as fast as he could with the high G, foot-slapping shuffle, Jason headed for the sealed door. He was no match for any Pyrrhon in hand-to-hand combat, young and small or old and crippled. The door thunked open as he went through, and barely closed in Polly's face. Outside, the rain had turned to snow, and Jason trudged wearily through the slush, rubbing his sore jaw and turning over the only fact he had. Grubber was a key. But to what? And who did he dare ask for more information? Kirk was the man he talked to best, but not anymore. That left only Meta as a possible source. He wanted to see her at once, but sudden exhaustion swept through him. It took all of his strength to stumble back to the school buildings. In the morning, he ate and left early. There was only a week left. It was impossible to hurry, and he cursed as he dragged his double-weight body to the assignment center. Meta was on night perimeter duty and should be back to her quarters soon. He shuffled over there and was lying on her bunk when she came in. "Get out," she said in a flat voice. "Or do I throw you out?" "Patience, please," he said as he sat up. "Just resting here until you came back. I have a single question, and if you will answer it for me, I'll go and stop bothering you." "What is it?" she asked, tapping her foot with impatience. But there was also a touch of curiosity in her voice. Jason thought carefully before he spoke. "Now, please don't shoot me. You know I'm an off-worlder with a big mouth, and you have heard me say some awful things without taking a shot at me. Now I have another one. Will you please show your superiority to the other people of the galaxy by holding your temper and not reducing me to component atoms?" His only answer was a tap of the foot, so he took a deep breath and plunged in. "What is a grubber?" For a long moment she was quiet, unmoving. Then she curled her lips back in disgust. "You find the most repulsive topics." "That may be so," he said, "but it still doesn't answer my question." It's the sort of thing people just don't talk about." "I do," he assured her. "Well, I don't. It's the most disgusting thing in the world, and that's all I'm going to say. Talk to Cranon, but not to me." She had him by the arm while she talked, and he was half dragged to the hall. The door slammed behind him, and he muttered, "Lady Wrestler," under his breath. His anger ebbed away as he realized that she had given him a clue in spite of herself. Next step, find out who or what Cranon was. Assignment Center listed a man named Cranon and gave his shift number and work location. It was close by, and Jason walked there. A large, cubicle and windowless building with the single word "food" next to each of the sealed entrances. The small entrance he went through was a series of automatic chambers that cycled him through ultrasonics, ultraviolet, antibio spray, rotating brushes, and 3 final rinses. He was finally admitted, damper but much cleaner, to the central area. Men and robots were stacking crates, and he asked one of the men for Cranon. The man looked him up and down coldly and spat upon his shoes before answering. Cranon worked in a large storage bay by himself. He was a stocky man in patched coveralls whose only expression was one of intense gloom. When Jason came in, he stopped hauling bales and sat down on the nearest one. The lines of unhappiness were cut into his face and seemed to grow deeper while Jason explained what he was after. All the talk of ancient history on Pyrrus bored him as well, and he yawned openly. When Jason finished, he yawned again and didn't even bother to answer him. Jason waited a moment, then asked, "I said, do you have any old books, papers, records, or that sort of thing?" You sure picked the right guy to bother, off-worlder, was his only answer. After talking to me, you're going to have nothing but trouble. And why is that? Jason asked. Why? For the first time, he was animated with something besides grief. I'll tell you why. I made one mistake. Just one. And I get a life sentence. For life. How would you like that? Just me alone, being by myself all the time, even taking orders from the grubbers. Jason controlled himself, keeping the elation out of his voice. Grubbers? What are grubbers? The enormity of the question stopped Cranon. It seemed impossible that there could be a man alive who had never heard of grubbers. Happiness lifted some of the gloom from his face as he realized that he had a captive audience who would listen to his troubles. Grubbers are traitors. That's what they are. Traitors to the human race. And they ought to be wiped out. Living in the jungle. The things they do with the animals. You mean they're people? Pyrrans? Like yourself? Jason broke in. Not like me, mister. Don't make that mistake again if you want to go on living. Maybe I dozed off on guard once, so I got stuck with this job. That doesn't mean I like it, or that I like them. They stink. Really stink. And if it wasn't for the food we'd get from them, they'd all be dead tomorrow. That's the kind of killing job I could really put my heart into. If they supply you with food, you must give them something in return. Trade goods, beads, knives, the usual things. Supply sends them over in cartons, and I take care of delivery. How? Jason asked. By armored truck to the delivery site, then I go back later to pick up the food they've left in exchange. Can I go with you on the next delivery? Cranon frowned over the idea for a minute. Yeah, I suppose it's all right if you're stupid enough to come. You can help me load. They're between harvests now, so the next trip won't be for 8 days. But that's after the ship leaves. It'll be too late. Can't you go earlier? Don't tell me your troubles, mister, Cranon grumbled, climbing to his feet. That's when I go, and the date's not changing for you. Jason realized he had got as much out of the man as was possible for one session. He started for the door, then turned. One thing, he asked. Just what do these savages, the grubbers, look like? How do I know? Cranon snapped. I trade with them. I don't make love to them. If I ever saw one, I'd shoot him down on the spot. He flexed his fingers, and his gun jumped in and out of his hand as he said it. Jason quietly let himself out. Lying on his bunk, resting his gravity-weary body, he searched for a way to get Cranon to change the delivery date. His millions of credits were worthless on this world without currency. If the man couldn't be convinced, he had to be bribed. With what? Jason's eyes touched the locker where his off-world clothing still hung, and he had an idea. It was morning before he could return to the food warehouse, and one day closer to his deadline. Cranon didn't bother to look up from his work when Jason came in. Do you want this? Jason asked, handing the outcast a flat gold case inset with a single large diamond. Cranon grunted and turned it over in his hands. A toy, he said. What is it good for? Well, when you press this button, you get a light. A flame appeared through a hole in the top. Cranon started to hand it back. What do I need a little fire for? Here, keep it. Now, wait a second, Jason said. That's not all it does. When you press the jewel in the center, one of these comes out. A black pellet the size of his fingernail dropped into his palm. A grenade made of solid ulranite. Just squeeze it hard and throw. 3 seconds later, it explodes with enough force to blast open this building. This time, Cranon almost smiled as he reached for the case. Destructive and death-dealing weapons are like candy to a Pyrran. While he looked at it, Jason made his offer. The case and the bombs are yours if you move the date of your next delivery up to tomorrow, and let me go with you. Be here at 5, Cranon said. We leave early. take a short break, and then we'll read chapter 15, which is pretty short. And then after that, I think we'll call it a night, for my own sake. I know it's a shorter night, but I'll be back tomorrow probably. And if not then, perhaps Saturday. Okay, chapter 15. The truck rumbled up to the perimeter gate and stopped. Cranon waved to the guards through the front window, then closed a metal shield over it. When the gate swung open, the truck, really a giant armored tank, ground slowly forward. There was a second gate beyond the first that did not open until the interior one was closed. Jason looked through the second driver's periscope as the outer gate lifted. Automatic flamethrowers flared through the opening, cutting off only when the truck reached them. The scorched area ringed the gate. Beyond that, the jungle began. Unconsciously, Jason shrank back in his seat. All the plants and animals he had seen only specimens of existed here in profusion. Thorn-ringed branches and vines laced themselves into a solid mat through which the wildlife swarmed. A fury of sound hurled at them, thuds and scratchings rang on the armor. Cranon laughed and closed the switch that electrified the outer grid. The scratchings died away as the beasts completed the circuit to the grounded hull. It was slow speed, low gear work tearing through the jungle. Cranon had his face buried in the periscope mask and silently fought the controls. With each mile, the going seemed to get better, until he finally swung up the periscope and opened the window armor. The jungle was still thick and deadly, but nothing like the area immediately around the perimeter. It appeared as if most of the lethal powers of Pyrrus were concentrated in the single area around the settlement. Why? Jason asked himself. Why this intense and planetary hatred? The motors died, and Cranon stood up, stretching. "We're here," he said. "Let's unload." There was bare rock around the truck, a rounded hillock that projected from the jungle, too smooth and steep for vegetation to get a hold. Cranon opened the cargo hatches, and they pushed out the boxes and crates. When they finished, Jason slumped down, exhausted, onto the pile. "Get back in. We're leaving," Cranon said. "You are. I'm staying right here." Cranon looked at him coldly. "Get in the truck, or I'll kill you. No one stays out here. For one thing, you couldn't live an hour alone. But worse than that, the grubbers would get you. Kill you at once, of course, but that's not important. But you have equipment we can't allow into their hands. You want to see a grubber with a gun?" While the Pyrran talked, Jason's thoughts had rushed ahead. He hoped that Cranon was as thick of head as he was fast of reflex. Jason looked at the trees, let his gaze move up through the thick branches. Though Cranon was still talking, he was automatically aware of Jason's attention. When Jason's eyes widened and his gun jumped into his hand, Cranon's own gun appeared, and he turned in the same direction. "There! In the top!" Jason shouted, and fired into the tangle of branches. Cranon fired too. As soon as he did, Jason hurled himself backwards, curled into a ball, rolling down the inclined rock. The shots had covered the sounds of his movements, and before Cranon could turn back, the gravity had dragged him down the rock into the thick foliage. Crashing branches slapped at him, but slowed his fall. When he stopped moving, he was lost in the tangle. Cranon's shots came too late to hit him. Lying there, tired and bruised, Jason heard the Pyrran cursing him out. He stamped around the rock, fired a few shots, but knew better than to enter the trees. Finally, he gave up and went back to the truck. The motor gunned into life, and the treads clanked and scraped down the rock and back into the jungle. There were muted rumblings and crashes that slowly died away. Then, Jason was alone. Up until that instant, Jason hadn't realized quite how alone he would be. Surrounded by nothing but death, the truck already vanished from sight. He had to force down an overwhelming desire to run after it. What was done was done. This was a long chance to take, but it was the only way to contact the grubbers. They were savages, but still they had come from human stock, and they hadn't sunk so low as to stop the barter with the civilized Pyrrans. He had to contact them, befriend them, find out how they had managed to live safely on this madhouse world. If there had been another way to lick the problem, he would have taken it. He didn't relish the role of martyred hero, but Kirk and his deadline had forced his hand. The contact had to be made fast, and this was the only way. There was no telling where the savages were, or how soon they would arrive. If the woods weren't too lethal, he could hide there, pick his time to approach them. If they found him among the supplies, they might skewer him on the spot with a typical Pyrran reflex. Walking warily, he approached the line of trees. Something moved on a branch, but vanished as he came near. None of the plants near a thick-trunked tree looked poisonous, so he slipped behind it. There was nothing deadly in sight, and it surprised him. He let his body relax a bit, leaning against the rough bark. Something soft and choking fell over his head. His body was seized in a steel grip. The more he struggled, the tighter it held him, until the blood thundered in his ears and his lungs screamed for air. Only when he grew limp did the pressure let up. His first panic ebbed a little when he realized that it wasn't an animal that attacked him. He knew nothing about the grubbers, but they were human, so he still had a chance. His arms and legs were tied, the power holster ripped from his arm. He felt strangely naked without it. The powerful hands grabbed him again, and he was hurled into the air to fall face down across something warm and soft. Fear pressed in again. It was a large animal of some kind, and all Pyrran animals were deadly. The animal moved off, carrying him. Panic was replaced by a feeling of mounting elation. The grubbers had managed to work out a truce of some kind with at least one form of animal life. He had to find out how. If he could get that secret and get it back to the city, it would justify all his work and pain. It might even justify Welf's death if the age-old war could be slowed or stopped. Jason's tightly bound limbs hurt terribly at first, but grew numb with the circulation cut off. The jolting ride continued endlessly. He had no way of measuring the time. A rainfall soaked him. Then he felt his clothes steaming as the sun came out. The ride was finally over. He was pulled from the animal's back and dumped down. His arms dropped free as someone loosed the bindings. The returning circulation soaked him in pain as he lay there, struggling to move. When his hands finally obeyed him, he lifted them to his face and stripped away the covering, a sack of thick fur. Light blinded him as he sucked in breath after breath of clean air. Blinking against the glare, he looked around. He was lying on a floor of crude planking, the setting sun shining into his eyes through the doorless entrance of the building. There was a plowed field outside, stretching down the curve of the hill to the edge of the jungle. It was too dark to see much inside the hut. Something blocked the light of the doorway, a tall, animal-like figure. On second look, Jason realized it was a man with long hair and a thick beard. He was dressed in furs, even his legs were wrapped in fur leggings. His eyes were fixed on his captive, while one hand fondled an axe that hung from his waist. "Who are you? What do you want?" the bearded man asked suddenly. Jason picked his words slowly, wondering if this savage shared the same hair-trigger tempers as the city dwellers. "My name is Jason. I come in peace. I want to be your friend." "Lies!" the man grunted and pulled the axe from his belt. "Junk man, tricks! I saw you hide. Wait to kill me. Kill you first." He tested the edge of the blade with a horny thumb, then raised it. "Wait!" Jason said desperately. "You don't understand." The axe swung down. "I'm from off-world." A solid thunk shook him as the axe buried itself in the wood next to his head. At the last instant, the man had twitched it aside. He grabbed the front of Jason's clothes and pulled him up until their faces touched. "It's true," he shouted. "You're from off-world." His hand opened, and Jason dropped back before he could answer. The savage jumped over him towards the dim rear of the hut. "Ress must know of this," he said, as he fumbled with something on the wall. Light sprang out. All Jason could do was stare. The hairy, fur-covered savage was operating a communicator. The calloused, dirt-encrusted fingers deftly snapped open the circuits and dialed a number. Alright, that's the end of that chapter. I think we'll stop here for now. I'm pretty beat. But like I said, I'll try and make some time tomorrow, and if that doesn't work, we'll make some time on Saturday. So stay tuned, and we'll be back with another chapter or two in the next couple days. Alright, thanks for hanging and for bearing with me while I recover. I know it's been a while. Alright, folks. Catch you again soon. Take it easy.